Ever feel like you're just surrounded by information, but you're still missing that key piece, that aha moment that makes it all click?
Yeah, like you have puzzle pieces, but they just won't fit together quite right.
Exactly. That's what we try to tackle here. And today, we're doing a really fascinating deep dive. We're exploring the symbolic meaning behind the dry bones vision in Ezekiel 37.
And for this, we're leaning heavily on the interpretation of Elder Martin, who studied under Elder Michael Johnson, a master Hebraist of biblical law, really a world expert in Paleo Hebrew. The insights come from King James Bible University.
Right, and what's so compelling, I think, is how this interpretation takes an ancient text and shows its power for understanding our own, spiritual states today.
Absolutely. It gives you surprising angles on things like worship, truth, inner strength, things you might think are straightforward, but maybe aren't.
Precisely. So our mission today is to unpack the key symbols Elder Martin highlights, drawing on Elder Johnson's expertise, the valley being dry, the bones themselves. We want to understand the causes behind this condition, and importantly, the path to restoration.
And just a quick heads up on how we'll handle some terms based on the source materials approach. When the text might imply Jewish, we'll broaden that to Jews or followers of Christ.
Good point. And we'll be expressing Jesus Christ as salvation of Jehovah and using Jehovah instead of divine.
Also, when we quote Bible verses, we'll just say the chapter and verse like Ezekiel 37:7. Nice and simple, no colons or knots.
Perfect. Okay, let's get started. The first big symbol, the valley. What's the significance there?
Well, according to Elder Martin's studies under Elder Johnson, the valley is way more than just like low ground. Symbolically, it's seen as a place of worship.
A place of worship, like a church.
It can be, but it's broader. It could be any system, any place, even a mindset where people put their trust or give reverence. Think worship grove.
Ah, okay. So anything you deeply respect or follow, whether it's good or bad.
Exactly. It could also symbolize the wilderness, a place of testing or straying, or even on a personal level, just the ways of our own flesh, our worldly tendencies.
That connects with Psalms 23:4, doesn't it? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that valley isn't just geography.
Right. It's a place, maybe even a worship space in darkness, which Elder Martin, informed by Elder Johnson, sees as an absence of understanding where truth's hidden, like the wilderness or our own nature if it's not aligned with Jehovah.
So it's any space, mental or physical, where we place ultimate trust.
Precisely. And look at Psalms 44:19. Sore broken us in the place of dragons, covered us with the shadow of death. Same idea. Different imagery, dragons, darkness.
And Jeremiah 2, verses 23 through 29, that seems pretty direct. It talks about seeing your way in the valley, worshiping idols, calling a piece of wood my father.
Yeah, that clearly links the valley to worshiping false gods. It shows how these places, these systems of belief, can lead you astray.
It seems like a pattern. Judges 1:19 mentions not being able to drive out inhabitants of these worship places because they had iron chariots.
A strong attachment to these ways.
A very strong attachment. And 1 Kings 14 and 15 says Israel made groves, these worship places, specifically to provoke Jehovah, leading to their scattering.
So these groves, these valleys, can be dangerous.
They can be. But here's the interesting part Elder Martin points out, based on Elder Johnson's insights. Exodus 34:12 through 14 commands destroying groves because Jehovah demands exclusive worship.
Right.
Yet in Genesis 21:33, you have Abraham planting a grove and calling on Jehovah there.
So it can be a place of true worship.
It can be among like-minded believers,
Yeah.
but the risk is always there. It can easily become about false worship if your focus shifts. It makes you think, what valleys are we in?
That's a really good question for reflection. Okay, let's move to the next term, dry. What does being dry signify in this vision? Dry, drawing again from Elder Johnson's Paleo Hebrew understanding via Elder Martin, isn't just about lacking water. Symbolically, it means being famished, no knowledge, or no counsel of the truth.
So spiritual starvation, spiritual death.
Exactly. Think about the flood narrative in Genesis 7:18 and 23. Everything on dry land, meaning relying only on the physical, perished. They lacked that spiritual breath of life. Dryness is a famine of understanding Jehovah.
A lack of spiritual nourishment. Job 12:15 connects us too, right? Withholding waters makes things dry up.
Precisely. Withholding true knowledge leads to this spiritual dryness, this death-like state. Without that knowledge of Jehovah, we're essentially, lifeless spiritually.
And Isaiah 5:11 through 13 gives a stark warning about pursuing strong drink.
Yes. Woe unto them that follow strong drink. My people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. Their multitude dried up with thirst.
So the strong drink here could be false doctrines, worldly distractions, things that lead to being spiritually dried up.
That's the idea. It makes you wonder what strong drinks in our own lives might be depleting us spiritually, leaving us parched.
Definitely something to consider. Okay, the final key term, bones. What do the bones represent?
Spiritually speaking, according to Elder Martin and Elder Johnson's insights, bones represent a few related things. They can mean kindred, our spiritual family in Jehovah.
Like relatives, but in the spirit.
Yes. They also stand for the framework or foundation of a person, their core strength. And crucially, Jehovah's bones are his laws, statutes, commandments, covenants.
The very structure of his truth, his strength.
Exactly, the bedrock. Look at Genesis 2:22 and 23. Adam seeing Eve and saying, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh."
That signifies deep connection, kinship.
Right. Elder Martin, guided by Elder Johnson's grasp of the language, sees this as kindred spirit, meant for unity. Just like followers are Jehovah's kindred, bound by his laws, the bond of bone.
And this extends beyond just two people.
Absolutely. Judith 16:17 talks about woe to nations rising against my kindred, with Jehovah taking vengeance. So those with Jehovah's spirit are kindred. His laws are the strength, the framework that binds this spiritual family.
So valley dry, bones. They paint a picture.
Mm.
But what caused this state? Why were the bones dry and scattered in the valley in the first place?
Elder Martin, deeply influenced by Elder Johnson's understanding of biblical law, traces it back to rebellion, transgression, and fundamentally forgetting Jehovah.
Just turning away.
Yes. Deuteronomy is full of warnings about this. Verses like Deuteronomy 19:5, 12, 28 through 32, 10, 12, and 13, they all stress obeying, keeping the covenant for your own good. Breaking that is key.
And Deuteronomy 31:15 through 21 even predicts this happening, doesn't it? Turning to other gods?
It does. It foretells that turning away, and you see it play out. Isaiah 5:4 through 9 describes Jehovah's vineyard being abandoned, left ruined.
Isaiah 57:3 through 5 talks about getting inflamed with idols under trees, back to those misused groves.
Exactly. And Job 21 describes people focused on wealth, ignoring spiritual things, then just going to the grave. A total focus on the worldly.
What about the idols themselves?
Wisdom of Solomon 14:15 through 21 gives some insight into how idol worship starts maybe from grief, custom, then it becomes law. Elder Martin notes this can include elevating humans to godlike status too.
And 2 Esdras 10:11 through 16 connects the fall to loving the world more than Jehovah's law. It's a consistent theme.
It really is. Departure from Jehovah, turning to idols, worldliness, false teachings. Proverbs 29:1 contrasts righteous and wicked rule, and Proverbs 16:25 and 14:12 warn about ways that seem right but lead to death.
So misdirection, bad leadership. What about specific actions?
Elder Martin, referencing Elder Johnson's knowledge of transgressions, points to things like Ezekiel 6:20 through 25, sacrificing children, building high places, terrible acts in supposed places of worship.
They're trusting in buildings.
Yes. Hebrews 9:24 reminds us salvation of Jehovah isn't found just in man-made temples. Jeremiah 7:4 warns against falsely trusting the temple building itself. And pride, as Proverbs 18:12 says, comes before destruction. It stops people seeing truth.
So the physical can become a stumbling block if faith is misplaced.
Definitely. And 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 17 is crucial. Believers are the temple. Defile that spiritual temple, and destruction follows. Matthew 24 even foretells the physical temple building's destruction.
The consequences are separation then.
Clearly. Isaiah 5:9-2, your iniquities have separated between you and your God. 2 Kings 22:17 talks about Jehovah's wrath for being forsaken. 2 Esdras 7:21 is a reminder of the command to live by his ways.
And if people don't listen.
Then you get Isaiah 52, where Jehovah calls and no one answers. And Amos 8:11, the famine not of bread, but of hearing the words of Jehovah. It's spiritual starvation.
Leading to the dry bones.
And Elder Martin emphasizes, based on Elder Johnson's perspective, this isn't something done to them. It's self-inflicted. He calls it spiritual suicide. Personal responsibility is huge here.
That's a powerful, sobering point. Okay, in this scene of devastation, what's the role of the prophet? Who is this figure sent to the bones?
The prophet, in this interpretation, which aligns with Elder Johnson's view of prophetic roles, is Jehovah's appointed messenger to these spiritually dead people.
Their job.
To prophesy life, to speak the word of the Spirit of God, and that often includes warnings, like in Ezekiel 3:18, warning the wicked. They teach Jehovah's true doctrines.
Like a watchman.
Exactly like a watchman, as Ezekiel 3:17 says, alerting people to danger. It's about delivering Jehovah's precise will as understood through the original language lens Elder Johnson provides.
So they're meant to trigger a shift in thinking.
Yeah.
A correction.
Yes. John 4:24 is key. Worship must be in spirit and truth, not tied just to places or human ideas. The prophet delivers a get-right lesson, calling people back from deception. Isaiah 8:20 says if they don't speak according to the law and testimony, there's no light in them.
The message has to align with Jehovah's word.
Absolutely. 2 Samuel 22:31 says Jehovah's word is proven trustworthy. Zechariah 13:3 and Jeremiah 23:16 warn against false prophets speaking from their own hearts. True doctrine comes from Jehovah, not the messenger, as John 7:16 says.
And people are expected to listen.
Yes. Deuteronomy 18:18 and 19 predicts a prophet like Moses, whose words must be heeded. Hebrews 13:2 reminds us to be open to messengers. Discerning true from false is critical, a point of a Kinenko. Elder Martin, learning from Elder Johnson, really stresses.
They're a vital link, bringing truth into that emptiness.
Exactly. Psalms 85:11 through 13 talks about truth springing from the earth. And think of Joseph in Genesis 41:56 and 57, providing knowledge during a famine. People had to go to him. Jehovah provides a way to get the knowledge needed for life.
So how do you tell a true prophet from a false one, according to this view?
The absolute key, as both Elders Martin and Johnson emphasize, is unwavering alignment with Jehovah's revealed word, rejecting doctrines based on human invention. That's the litmus test.
Okay, now let's get to the heart of it, the actual revival in Ezekiel 37:7 through 10. How do these bones come back to life?
It starts when the prophet obeys. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as he does, Ezekiel 37:7 says, there was a noise.
A noise, like just sound.
Elder Martin, interpreting through Elder Johnson's understanding, suggests this noise is significant. It's the sound of people hearkening, responding, their voices joining in. He connects it to 1 Samuel 4, 5, and 6. The huge shout when the ark returned excitement, Jehovah's presence returning.
So the word goes out, people respond. Then comes the shaking.
Yes, and behold a shaking. This isn't just literal trembling. It symbolizes a big shift, like being shaken awake or an earthquake's impact, a reshift in mindset, a spiritual awakening.
Like Jacob waking up in Genesis 28:16 and realizing Jehovah was there.
Exactly. Or the earthquake at Salvation of Jehovah's Resurrection in Matthew 28:2. It's the jarring, awakening power of truth hitting people who are spiritually asleep.
And after the shaking.
And the bones came together, bone to his bone. This is the kindred reuniting, spiritually related people coming back to Jehovah's law as the foundation.
Like Psalms 22:27, all the kindreds of the nations shall worship.
Precisely. And Job 4:14 connects shaking bones to regaining strength. Psalms 34:20 assures not one bone is broken, upholding the whole law. The bones coming together reestablishes that essential framework of Jehovah's covenant.
Then the rebuilding starts: sinews, flesh, skin.
Verse 8, lo, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Sinews are that inner strength, the support structure holding things to the bone, the foundation.
And this rebuilding comes through
Righteousness. Elder Martin connects this to cleansing with knowledge, like the water in Leviticus 11:32, being clothed and knit together, Job 10:11, building with wisdom, Proverbs 24:3, Exodus 36:1-2, seeking the lost and binding the broken, Ezekiel 34:16, teaching diligently, Deuteronomy 6:4-9. It's an active process.
It also sounds like putting on the new man from Ephesians 4:21-25.
Exactly. Putting off the old corrupt self and putting on the new, created in righteousness, and receiving that new heart, promised in Ezekiel 36:26, a heart of flesh, not stone.
A heart the Spirit can write on, like 2 Corinthians 3:3 says.
Yes, and Sirach 22:15 and 16 contrasts a foolish heart with one established by wisdom. It's becoming a new creature, 2 Corinthians 5:17, finding strength in unity, Ecclesiastes 4:9-12.
But even with all that structure, flesh, skin, still no life.
Still no breath. That's crucial. Verse 9, prophesy unto the wind. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain that they may live.
And the breath is?
The Spirit of Jehovah. That's what gives life. Ezekiel 37:9 makes the connection directly. Isaiah 41:17 and 18 shows the Spirit helping the needy.
The four winds seem important too.
They often symbolize the Spirit's origin or reach Daniel 7:2, Matthew 24:31 gathering the elect, Revelation 7:1-3 holding the winds. It's Jehovah's Spirit bringing true spiritual life.
Life comes from his breath.
Yes. Psalms 33:6, heavens made by his breath. Job 33:4, the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Psalms 156, let everything that has breath praise Jehovah. And John 20:21 and 22, salvation of Jehovah, breathing on the disciples, giving the separated body the covenant of peace.
So the command is given, the prophet prophesies to the wind. Then what?
Verse 10, so I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army.
Wow. Complete transformation.
Total revival. The breath enters, they live, they become this powerful army for Jehovah, restored through his spirit and by returning to his covenant.
An army built on that new heart, that new self.
Exactly. Established in wisdom, united in strength. A complete reversal of the dry, scattered state.
We touched on this when talking about the cause, but what are the main things that block this revival process?
Yeah, it comes back to those same issues. A hard heart, pride, just refusing to accept the truth, loving false doctrines, being attached to worldly ways instead of spiritual growth.
Trusting people or institutions over Jehovah?
That's a big one. Plain ignorance, too, just not having the true knowledge keeps you dry. And defiling the real temple, our bodies, or getting caught up in false worship in physical buildings, and, just the general influence of wickedness acting against righteousness.
Seems like a lot to overcome, so trust and hope must be incredibly important here.
Absolutely crucial. Elder Martin highlights Ezekiel's trust in verse 3. When asked if the bones can live, he says, O Creator God, thou knowest, that complete reliance.
Trusting Jehovah's power, like Jeremiah 32:17 says, nothing is too hard for him.
Exactly. And Romans 8:24 reminds us, we are saved by hope. Hope in what we don't see yet, needing patience, believing Jehovah will fulfill his promises, just like Ezekiel did.
And one final clarification to the temple. Where does Jehovah truly dwell?
The scriptures Elder Martin uses are clear. 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 17. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you.
So it's spiritual, the believers together.
Yes, the collective body indwelt by the Spirit. Not physical buildings, which Matthew 24 predicts will be destroyed anyway. Those buildings, Elder Martin warns, can sadly become places of false worship, actually blocking connection with Jehovah.
This whole exploration, drawing on Elder Martin's work under Elder Michael Johnson, it really does shed light on Ezekiel 37.
It really does. And what's striking is how relevant it feels today. That state of spiritual dryness, as Elder Martin notes, it's self-inflicted from our choices.
There's hope.
Huge hope. The vision shouts that if we truly listen to Jehovah's real messengers, receive his spirit, hold fast to the covenant, revival, full restoration, it's absolutely possible.
So the takeaway is powerful. It really makes you think, considering all this, what valleys or dry spots might be in our own understanding, our own worship.
Right. And what would it really mean to receive that breath of true knowledge, to become part of that exceeding great army?
It leads to a final thought, maybe a challenge for all of us listening. Are we genuinely willing to look hard at our own worship groves, the things we deeply trust?
To make sure our reverence is truly pointed towards authentic knowledge, towards Jehovah, letting his spirit revive any dry bones within us.
May you continue to dig deeper into these vital truths, and may you find the strength and the knowledge you need to walk faithfully in the ways of salvation of Jehovah.
You can't grasp the fact that you are